What's going on, everybody? This is the blockchain backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Welcome to the last day of the month as we take a look over here at the Bitcoin price chart and the altcoin market and take a look for more signs to show that the bottom is in for this market. Last night, I put out the second newsletter for the blockchain backer premium newsletter over there on Substack. There's a link in the description of this video to my Substack if you'd like to support me and if you'd like to check out the additional content that I do put out there. But there was something from that newsletter that I would like to share here on the YouTube channel, showing additional reasons why I think the bottom is already in. Now, you'd pretty much have to be living underneath a rock or be subscribed to the channel and only watch about one video per month to have somehow missed the discussion of how this is Wyckoff accumulation over here for the altcoin market, because we've been talking about it since June and how this was the same type of accumulation that we saw at the bottom of 2019 and 2020. And that even if we take that whole fractal behavior in there, compress it all the way down, and we can really see this actually really is the same thing going on in here. It's just that this ending phase of our spring and our accumulation in here has lasted a little bit longer. But otherwise, we've got ourselves a pretty amazing match that has gone on in here to find a bottom. But over the course of the years of having my YouTube channel, I've talked a lot about different things on how completed crashes look, how a lot of times I pick my targets, and a lot of times I talk about the rally prior to capitulation. For example, this is Bitcoin's rally prior to capitulation. For those who are here in 2020 and 2021, we talked a lot about the rally prior to capitulation happening in here. If you were around near the peak that came in during Elon Musk euphoria and all that stuff too, we talked a lot about this rally prior to capitulation in here. And that for picking out my targets on where the market could top at, we used this a lot. This was used very frequently in my target picking on about the rally prior to capitulation. So notice what happens in here. And this one is actually from here in 2018. So we were just looking at Bitcoin in 2014 and 2015, how you have the big breakdown, then you bounce through. You have two attempts at attempting to get back through, and then finally you go into capitulation. Here you are in 2018. Here's the support. You break through, attempt to get through, and then go into capitulation. The story was also true over here on the altcoin market back in 2018. Support, breaks through, attempts, capitulation. And that using that level right in there, the rally prior to capitulation, how I would pick out tops and where the big resistances could come in. And we even saw that actually end up happening there in 2021, how it pinpoint nailed it based on the rally prior to capitulation. But a lot of that all started by really observing Bitcoin back in 2014 and 2015 and the structure that played out in here, how this is your typical crash. Then we watched the same thing play out again here in 2018, just as we had observed in 2014 and 15. Then here we are in 2022 and 2023, Wyckoff accumulation, just as we saw, but on a much bigger time frame with the altcoin market back in 2018, 19, and 20. I was peeking around at various altcoins, and I wrote about this in my newsletter yesterday. In one of the sections, we were talking about how I've looked at my hardware wallets, and like one of my hardware wallets, there's a chart on there that kind of shows the whole portfolio and how it's doing, and that the entire portfolio looks exactly like this thing, and it's like right here. And it shows just the same thing. It shows that crash, the bounce, and then it shows the two waves of rally prior to capitulation, then goes into capitulation, and then boom, breaks back up in here, which you can see right there. There's the crash, the break, the two attempts, the rally prior to capitulation, capitulates, consolidates, and then breaks its way back up. And that were just the same thing. It's literally the exact same thing happening in here, right over there on my hardware wallet of all the assets that I have on there combined. So I've been looking around to say, can I find this exact same thing somewhere else in the market? Because, I mean, we've got that going on in the altcoin market. We see this, but we're kind of like petered out right now, right? You got a bunch of people screaming that this thing is going to go breaking down and crumble. And like I've talked about this too, there's never been a time in history in the altcoin market where we hold a level like this for this long and then break down. If we did it, it would be the first time. So there's never been a time where support has held for 8 months, almost 9 months now, and then the support just fell out from underneath it. That's never happened. But if I'm able to see this whole thing happening in here, and this completion and this breakup happening in here on my hardware wallet, can I find any assets throughout the market that are doing the exact same thing? And if you've been catching my markets in the morning, occasionally we've brought up the topic of Filecoin because, you've got a lot of stuff going on out there in regards to AI right now. There's the AI hype that's going on. It's kind of died off now, but with AI also comes decentralized storage. Hence, bring in Filecoin. Filecoin's had a nice little pop over here, but one thing, if you take notice on here, is that you see precisely that going on here on the market cap of Filecoin. Now, I've been critical of Filecoin, the actual token, because you'll notice that the Filecoin token price looks entirely different than the market cap price, and that's due to the massive inflationary pressures placed on Filecoin as the total supply increased by 132% in the last year. So there's a massive dilution that's happening to the market cap and tokens right now that's causing the token price to be substantially lower, in which we can even see right in here. Notice this January of 2021 level right in here, how far it is broken below there at one point. At one point, Filecoin's token price was 87% below the January of 2021 price level. Whereas if you look at the market cap, this January of 2021 price level has actually held. So the problem with Filecoin when it comes to its actual token price has a lot to do with its tokenomics. So we're not going to really dive into that, but we'll talk about what's happening here with market caps because market caps do matter. And I will go to the grave saying that they do matter. And I think anybody who's out there saying that they don't matter is just trying to put some type of logic on saying, hey, we couldn't have predicted to the top because blah, 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 blah. But the market caps clearly showed it to us. We saw it over here on Bitcoin with a perfect 4.236 extension. And then we also saw it over there on Ethereum with a perfect 4.236 extension, along with Ethereum Classic's market cap as well. And, try to tell me that market caps don't matter when you have that happening right there. And as precise as that can possibly be to hit that 4.236 extension and that be the top over here on the market cap. So when looking at market caps, trying to assess, is there similar behavior that's happening over here on these coins than what happens when we actually see bottoms of Bitcoin or when we see bottoms in the altcoin market? Outside of just saying, hey, we have a fractal that looks very similar in here for a Wyckoff accumulation. You have all the same things happening in here in regards to moving average crosses, right? When these things end up happening, these have signaled the bottom is already in. That's what happened back in 2019. When that happened, the bottom was already in. We've noticed that in here. Look over at the monthly time frame, right? You go onto these bigger time frames to recognize that things are starting to turn their way up, whether you're looking at the altcoin market or you're looking over there at Bitcoin, to notice that by the time we spend an extended amount of time down in here, eventually, once we ramp our way back up, the bottom was already in, along with being able to hold those 40 levels over there on the relative strength, which in a bullish period, 40 acts as support, and in a bearish period, 60 will act as resistance. So as we can see throughout the life cycle of Bitcoin, it's always been in this bullish market. And then still to this day, it did actually end up holding 40. Big questions will arise when it actually does make its way back up to 60. That'll be a big high watch zone, but so far so good. Holding, and then the price behavior, stochastic RSI right in here after spending a prolonged period down at the bottoms, just as we've seen in 2015 and in 2019. Whoop, back up it starts to go. But like I've argued for the longest time that I've believed this has been Wyckoff accumulation for the altcoin market down here at the lows ever since June, while the world has been screaming that it's going to go lower. We have perfectly mirrored what a bottom looks like, and then we ended up having our spring phase, which we were looking for. Came in a little sooner than expected. My idea on spring phase was actually that we'd get to like right here, and then spring would come in. We hit the 200-day, and then CZ Binance comes out and goes after FTX, and boom, we get it right then and there. But the question is, can we find this type of behavior in the market to signify the bottom is in, this whole time period is over for us, as I've shown over here that I'm seeing on my hardware device, that this particular portfolio is indicating that bottom was already in. And I come back over here to look at this Filecoin price chart to show you what I am seeing in here. And that right down here on the bottom, I have Bitcoin, what we were just talking about, showing what a completed crash and a Wyckoff accumulation looks like before it breaks out and starts moving its way on up. And then up here on the top, I've got the market cap of Filecoin to show you how price has behaved over the course of the last 2 years. The thing that stands out to me immediately is just that we have exactly what we've been talking about. You have that initial support that gets found, the breakdown, the rally prior to capitulation, and then finally we go on into capitulation. Same thing happens over here on Bitcoin, right? The bounce, the rally prior to capitulation, then finally the capitulation that ends up coming in here. But there's another thing about this that is intriguing as well, and it's just how we have the same Wyckoff schematic that happens down in here. Obviously, you have little variations that are happening in here, but for the most part, it's the same thing. Phase 1, phase 1, phase 2, phase 2, and then phase 3 and phase 3. Then finally, the breakout and the breakout. But here's the thing, too, as well. Look at how much time it took for these things to play out as well. If you take a look at Filecoin to see where this peak came in right in here, all the way to the actual capitulation taking place, it's a total of 405 days. So 405 days from peak to capitulation. Let's take a look over here at Bitcoin. How many days did it take from peak to capitulation? 409 days. Okay, well, let's see. How long did it take for Bitcoin to break out of this range, and how long did it take for Filecoin to break out of this range? Well, from capitulation day until the day it actually broke out of here for Filecoin, it was 282 days of Wyckoff accumulation. And then down here on Bitcoin, from capitulation to the day it broke out, it's 288 days. You have 405 days from peak to capitulation. You have 409 days from peak to capitulation. You have a Wyckoff accumulation of 282 days. You have Wyckoff accumulation of 288 days. Both with the exact same structure happening in here. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to combat these people who are screaming that this market is going to break down much lower. You can very clearly see the technical bottom of the market came in June. Whether there's various altcoins that went lower, Bitcoin went down like $1,000 lower. The technical bottom and the capitulation of this market was in June. But of course, when you look at stuff like that, you see that the market has behaved this way. It starts to bring up a lot of different thoughts in my own mind too. I'm like, okay, I see it on one of my hardware wallets. I'm seeing it over there in Filecoin. I'm seeing it sprinkled throughout the market. That we've acted completely like this, and we're already seeing this phase coming in here for several aspects of the market. Then you start questioning yourself. Is the hypothesis, is the theory that it's just going to go into retracement? Is that going to be it, or are we actually starting something much, much bigger than that? That's going to be up for debate as time goes on. And for me personally, I still have to sit here and say to myself, if Bitcoin gets back into retracement, I have to pull plugs here, because that's been my game plan all along. I'm going to stick to that and wait for the market to decide what it's going to do from right here, because we all know dang well what can happen at these locations. Like for those who have been watching markets in the morning, and we watched, for weeks on end, we watched gold work its way up to that 702, not be able to close a weekly candle, close above it, boom, then it turns around from there. And then of course, we've been watching the Dow Jones do the exact same thing. So as a chartist, as somebody who just talks about retracements, that's what I've been talking about for the last year, retracements. Still, my game plan is going to be about, hey, if we can get back up here into the retracements, it's time for me to start cutting a lot of my stuff, as my original game plan has always been. But I'm telling you, seeing stuff like this really makes me start questioning my hypothesis and my thesis on whether or not this is actually the start of a new cycle starting to crank itself out. And it's one thing for, structures to just look the same or look somewhat similar, but they're ridiculously similar. They're very identical to what happens at completed crashes, completed corrections. And then you have the same time. That's one of those ones where you just kind of like your mind gets blown a little bit. You're talking 405 days versus 409, and then you're talking 282 days versus 288. That's a little silly. That's a little way too close for comfort. So I'll keep my mind open to it. But this is still always going to be my game plan. And then once we get here, kind of waiting to see, what are you going to do now, market? What's your game plan from here? But as I was writing this news article yesterday, in bed, sick, I've had a fever of over 100 degrees. I spent the whole day in bed writing this from my laptop, and then shared a screenshot in there of what one of my hardware devices looked like and how it was just the absolute perfect completed crashing structure, with the crash, then the rally prior to capitulation, followed by the actual capitulation, showing the June low occurring back in there, and then how it's already worked its way back up in here, precisely as we have seen here before, for what completions look like for both Bitcoin back in 2014-15 and for the altcoin market back in 2018. But that those who are looking for new lows to come in this market, to kind of recognize what you're really asking for here. You're asking for things to really just deviate away from what's actually really happening here. And what we watched happen throughout all of June and through all of December, right, is just max ultimate fear, bear posting, doom posting all over Twitter and all over YouTube, and that we're going to go significantly lower. And I was not here in 2015 for Bitcoin. I was here at the bottom for 2018. I wrote that whole thing, and I went through the whole bottom post. I went through the whole bottom. I did an emotional log of what it was like down in there. I've shared that in multiple places of what my emotions were like at the bottom of 2018. But I had always wondered what this whole moment felt like, and then especially what that spring phase felt like right there after being down here for already 6, 7, 8 months, and then finally get one more slam that happens in there. That I would have to assume what it was feeling like down here for Bitcoin in 2015 is precisely how we have felt here in this market ever since June. The difference is we've had, of course, all those narratives to go along with it when it comes to Celsius, Three Arrows Capital, Luna, UST, FTX, Grayscale, Genesis, Gemini, you name it. We had every narrative to scream doom, 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 doom. And that's usually where bottoms are found, right? When the narrative is just absolutely doomy. And it's usually the top comes in when everything is absolutely moony, like Elon Musk and Tesla buying Bitcoin. And so I've always wondered what it was like being down in here, even though I wasn't like eager to actually experience it. I've always wondered, but I was like, I don't really want to actually experience that. But I think we have just now gone through that. And I think what we clearly have right now throughout the market is a lot of doubt in what's actually happening right in here. But I think it's pretty darn clear, especially even from a time perspective, to show where we really are in this market. And I think we have turned the corner. So I really wanted to share that with you guys. I'd gone into detail and stuff in markets in the morning with Filecoin and my problems with it when it comes to tokenomics. And I think that's one thing everybody really should be looking at right now is tokenomics, just like understanding what is the supply dynamic of any of the coins that you're actually in. Any of these things with 30, 40, 50, 60 or more percent inflation per year, it's really hard for those coins to come back. And so, this is a great time in the market when things are just kind of boring to go through and really review all those things. Like maybe there's these coins that you think are absolutely awesome and you think they're going to be a game changer one day. But the problem that may be there is that there's a huge tokenomics issue. And if there's like 60% inflation to the supply every year, it's totally going to impact the potential on what that coin can actually do. So this is a great time to really to look at that type of stuff. And I've been spending in markets in the morning really sharing that with people on how to look at that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I really wanted to share kind of, that observation that has been made by doing a lot of that stuff to show the time perspective on Filecoin, to show that screenshot of my hardware device, to show how completions of crashes have happened, Wyckoff accumulations, and then recoveries, and that enough time has elapsed in this market that we're at the ending stage of Wyckoff accumulation in this market, and I couldn't be more excited for it. So the doomers can keep on screaming doom, but I just don't think we're gonna get it, guys. I think we're on our way back up. So all right, that's going to be it for this one. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor, but if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.